Sitting at the bonfire with Jimmy was a reprieve from dealing with sick coworkers over the last month. We had the campground to ourselves, the frantic summer months at Dot Mill Resort coming to an end. All campsites were open, and we isolated ourselves in a gap between some trees at the far end. Jimmy chucked spare wood from his truck to the weakened fire pit and sat on his cooler, taking a long swig from his beer. We sat for minutes, admiring the flames, listening to insects soothing our ears with night songs, and then we set up our tents. Afterward, he pinched a cigarette with his lips, kicked off his shoes and socks, and wiggled his toes in the wet grass while I nursed the fire with a stick. He thumbed the strings of his acoustic bass, his long hair hanging over his eyes as he played riffs from Primus and Tool. All around us, pure darkness like a pocket we've slipped in, carried away from the hectic day-to-day we've grown used to. No street lamps, passing headlights, computer screens, or phones. This night was long needed, but I was only thinking about the new medication I had to take. Earlier this year, I laid out a blueprint to my therapist of desired life changes, and one of the biggest was simply spending more time outside. Being down in Tecumseh, Missouri, near the North Fork River, sharing a room at Dot Mill Resort with friends, I would wake up and watch the sunrise from the second floor of the Cotton Gin Inn. I'd brew coffee on a kerosene stove, zip up my jacket, read a page or two, and then take my new antidepressants. I never thought I'd eventually find myself popping pills daily to fend off the depression I have had for so long. For years, I carried the familiar weight that anchored me down after long workdays, and it never got any better. Rarely would I experience boundless energy from sleeping enough, or the alertness and focus that came from exercise. But even then, I expected a return to normalcy. God, is this the new normal? I asked my therapist. As I expounded upon my past in the last session, I concluded that depression is the normal state of things. Because of COVID, mental health has changed for so many, including myself. Working from home, not being able to step into public like before, has all but shifted the way I think. Fear consumed me the closer I stood to someone I didn't know because they could make me sick. Distance from my friends led to the lack of socializing I needed. For 2 years, I adapted with the world and fell further into the depression I carried, never really acknowledging it. Many friends have said they put a smile on as they carry their own weight of uncertainty through the day, that they can't seem to get out of the prison they're in. I understood. I saw my apartment as my prison, a small, bland place, lifeless, lacking things like curtains and color. Money couldn't get me out of the dark hole of memories over the past 3 years because I couldn't find a better paying job. No one hired or didn't pay enough. This alone drove many to suffering since jobs were lost and in turn hard to get. When your way of life is uprooted with the masses, collective suffering happens, and it lingers for a long time. The trees, however, stood powerful, their roots gripping deep in the Ozark soil, their branches offering protection from above. I wished to stand strong like a mighty oak. Instead, I turned my thoughts into writing. Being at the resort for a writing retreat opened opportunities to draft poems and journal before I laid down for the night. Already, it was more cathartic than expected. For hours, I paid attention to the natural presence of the world, the sounds we should all know but don't. Branches swaying with the breeze. What does that sound like? It sounds unlike the chaos back home, where construction workers loudly rebuilt the road outside my home. When the train flies through my parents' backyard every morning and late at night, and where the many voices of disgruntled shoppers at Walmart refused to wear masks at the height of the pandemic. While some preferred the silence of their homes to the songs of birds, I didn't. For 2 years, most of my days were spent inside working from home. Panic welled up in me when I stepped past my front door because I didn't want to breathe someone else's air. But the air cutting through thousands of trees was like a smooth drink of fine oak-infused wine. When one desires some shape of solace, one must find it, even if it means escaping the confines of the city and the people. But conversations with a therapist helped me. It was quite remarkable to recall a lot of my life I hadn't thought about in years. And when I brought up the topic of camping, she seemed surprised. "Are you going by yourself?" she asked. "With a friend," I said. "Last time you talked about having a plan. Do you have one?" "Well, I'm kind of making it up as I go. That's what I'm used to." "Why are you used to it?" "I guess it's how I've always been." I stared out one of the office windows, admiring the lake in the distance. People jogged around it, and others conversed on benches near the shore. But that was all I could do. Observe. Watch the water ripple, the trees dance with the rhythm of the wind. I pictured camping at the resort, hidden by the trees, and then I remembered the woods of my old home. I'd pick pine cones and bat them against trees, and then I'd imagine myself dueling a knight from one of my fantasy books. During the winter, my grandpa cut down some of the trees and burned them by his shed. At night, I could see his silhouette cut out against the fire, poking at it with a stick. There was this creek, too, that would flow from the woods, and it flooded when it rained. For days, we'd either stay inside the trailer or wear rubber boots to walk to the bus, since the water was so high. There was a long silence, and then my therapist asked, "Why camping?" I continued watching the lake outside. Truthfully, I never liked camping. My parents couldn't get me to do it. Anything related to being outside, I fought against, but now it's different. It reminded me of the crackle of burning wood in my grandpa's wood stove, the river echoing through trees, and sitting at bonfires with friends and family. It reminded me of home.